Alan Rowland. I'm going to change my focus considerably from what the usual presentation is. And last week I was in Huntsville, Alabama, actually Redstone, Arsenal, spent 3 days there. Enjoyed doing that, like going up to Redstone. And during the afternoon, I was killing some time, and I thought, what would be fun to do? And I'd heard about this cemetery that's located in Huntsville. It's an absolutely incredibly large cemetery. It's called Maple Hill Cemetery. So let me go to my camera here and show you what it looks like. There's the title here, Maple Hill Cemetery, Huntsville, Alabama. Until 1921, it was just referred to as the burying ground. But after that time, it was referred to as Maple Hill. If you're curious about going there, and I would encourage you to do this. It's a fascinating place here, if you can call cemeteries fascinating places. But the address is 202 Maple Hill Drive, Huntsville, Alabama. Here's a photograph of the historical marker. A large cemetery. I'll mention this to you in just a few minutes, but 80,000 burials there, and that's probably not including the many unmarked graves that are present. Covers over 100 acres. You'll see this in the narrative in just a few minutes. And be sure and stop by the, shall we say, the main office, and you can pick up one of these brochures and tell you about the cemetery itself. Here identifies the rather noteworthy individuals. Not that anybody that is buried there is not noteworthy, but it tells you about those individuals. Those are the famous people, so to speak, and it even gives you a map to locate those individuals. So that's really good. I wish our local cemeteries would do something like that, but they do not, and we just have to live with that. All right, but the original cemetery was 2 acres. This was 2 acres that was donated or actually sold to the city of Huntsville on 14th September 1822 by the planter Leroy Pope. And in fact, if you go there, you can find his grave, or actually this is a marker for several individuals, and he is buried there or close nearby. And back in those times, they were simple markers, and some of those did not last all that long. Okay, so and I told you that it covered 100 acres, over 80,000 burials, large cemetery, certainly the largest one in Huntsville. Now, let's get into why it's so noteworthy. There are 5 Alabama governors that are lying in rest there. You have 5 United States senators, there are 10 United States congressmen, 2 Confederate generals, 2 Northern generals, and 19 German rocket scientists. And I'm not going to get into those individuals, but all of these individuals are those that were part of the team with Warner von Braun that were forced to come to the United States at the conclusion of World War II to help design the missile systems for the United States. So anyway, 19 of those individuals are buried there. All right, so let's go into our governors. And the first governor is I missed one here. Let me go back to my previous page. Sorry about that. And our first governor is that of Thomas Bibb. Thomas Bibb, who was, let's get this down here. Thomas Bibb, who was the governor from 1820, 1821. He was Alabama's second governor. And I'll tell you about his grave. Here it is there. All of these governor grave markers are marked with these black signs right here. And they're all reasonably close to each other, so this is pretty easy to find these anyway. But one of the interesting things about Governor Bibb, and they say anyway, I have no reason to doubt this, but people that are ghost hunters will tell you that every full moon that Thomas Bibb's carriage will appear, and it will be drawn by 4 black horses, and riding on the buckboard of that carriage is the Governor Thomas Bibb. And the way the story goes is that Governor Bibb was, when he died, when he passed away, he was buried at his plantation at Belmina. And that's where he wanted to lie and rest forever. But his body was later exhumed and moved over to Maple Hill Cemetery. And of course, at full moon of each month, then Thomas Bibb has his carriage to come by with the 4 black horses, and they transport him back to Belmina. So anyway, people say that they have seen that, so you can go by there if you wish to do so and see it for yourself. All right, another governor is that of Clement Comer Clay, And from 1835 to 1837, you're going to hear me mention his name on several occasions here. He was also a United States representative. He was a United States senator. He did it all. Here, visiting there, you can find his grave there. Clement Comer Clay. All right, moving right along here. You have Reuben Chapman. Reuben Chapman, who was a governor from 1847 to 1849, also a United States representative. We don't see that very much anymore. Here's his grave there of Reuben Chapman. All right, on we go. Let's see, get this one out of the way. We also have Robert Patton. Robert Patton, who was the, let me get it down here where you can read it, who was the governor from 1865 to 1868. There's his grave site and marker. All right. And if you just prowl around next to these graves, you see all sorts of interesting individuals that are there. Okay. David Peter Lewis, 1872 to 1874. And there's his burial site. All right. Not far from the others. We also had United States senators. And had 5 senators here. Alabama's first senator was John Williams Walker, 1819 to 1822. And our county, Walker County, Alabama, is named after John Williams Walker. There it is. That's what his burial site there, right next to Leroy Pope. Okay. And let's see who else we have here. Clement Comer Clay, that I talked to you about just a few minutes ago. And Jeremiah Clemens, another individual who was a senator. All right, let's move on. And Clement Claiborne Clay, which we talked about just a little bit ago, senator from 1853 to 1861. He later was a Confederate States of America senator. And you really have to be somewhat of a student of history to understand that, because you had senators that were United States senators, and then during the Civil War we had Confederate States senators, and they met in Richmond. And John Sparkman was another one. Here's John Sparkman. This is in rather recent times. And you can see the dates there, 1946 to 1979. Took this photograph. It was in a driving rain when I took this photograph last week. We had United States representatives. Clement Comer Clay, you heard me talk about him earlier, 1837 to 1841. He was a United States representative and also a governor. And Reuben Chapman, who was a governor. And here we're talking about representatives. Peter Mindert Dox, 1869 1873. Joseph Humphrey Schloss, 1871 to 1875. All right, still representatives here. And William Willis Garth, 1877 1879. William Lowe, 1879 to 82. William Richardson, 1900 1914. Jabez Leftwich, who was not an Alabama representative, but he served Virginia from 1821 to 1825. Here's his grave marker. I just happened to walk up on that. He was also a brigadier general in the Virginia militia. All right, and let's see who else we have. Some Confederate leaders. And Confederate leaders are Thomas Farron. He was a deputy to the Provisional Confederate Congress. Nicholas Davis, delegate to the Alabama Secession Convention, deputy to the Provisional Confederate Congress, and a lieutenant colonel in the Confederate States Army. Clement Claiborne Clay, talked about him numerous times here, was a Confederate States senator. Okay, and moving on. Richard Walker was a deputy to the Provisional Confederate Congress, Confederate States of America senator, governor of Alabama. David P. Lewis, also a representative. He was a deputy to the Provisional Confederate Congress, a CSA senator. You really need to be a student of Alabama history to fully appreciate all of that. Leroy Page Walker was the first Confederate States of America Secretary of War. He was Confederate States of America General during the Civil War. So the military figures that we had here. And Dr. David Moore was a family physician to General Andrew Jackson, also a state legislator from Alabama. Egbert J. Jones, colonel in the 4th Alabama Confederate States of America, killed in the First Battle of Manassas. Calling out all of these names here makes me think like it's a graduation at a college. All right, William T.H. Brooks, Union General. That's a Northern General. Here's a likeness of him, of his, I should say it's a photograph of his burial site. Let's see. And Gilbert M.L. Johnson was also a Northern General. Robert Spraggins, a U.S. Army General. This is during World War II. He commanded the 44th Division and the 71st Division. Those are infantry divisions. All right. More prominent individuals here. Leroy Pope was the father of Huntsville. That's not who Huntsville's named after. Huntsville's named after John Hunt. But here's the grave site there of Leroy Pope. Albert Russell Erskine, president of Studebaker Motors. If you can imagine that, President Studebaker, you probably have not heard that name of that car unless you're in your 50s, 60s, or 70s. That's where he's buried there. And you don't see very many of these mausoleum type places, these huge tombs in the cemetery, but there are a few. And of course, with Albert Erskine, he had money that he could do this. And David Humphreys Todd, and I found this to be very fascinating. Now, Abraham Lincoln was president of the United States of America. And Abraham Lincoln's brother-in-law was David Humphreys Todd, who was a captain in the Confederate States of America Army. Here's his marker right there. So bear in mind here, this is the brother-in-law to Abraham Lincoln. And he was the commander at Libby Prison. Libby Prison is located in Richmond, Virginia, and it was a prisoner of war camp for northern prisoners, and it was known for its brutality towards these prisoners. And for David Humphreys Todd, Captain Todd, he was relieved of his command there for cruelty to these prisoners. I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, other individuals. Priscilla Holmes Drake. She was a woman, a female suffragist. And moving on, some of the other rather noteworthy individuals here. Don Mincher. Gosh, I had a number of baseball cards of Don Mincher, in the 60s, early 70s anyway. He played high school baseball for Butler High School, that's in Huntsville, and was good enough to make it to the majors and was there for 12 years. Played for the Minnesota Senators, Washington Senators, Minnesota Twins, Oakland A's, various other teams for a year or two, whatever. But if you are visiting the cemetery, be sure and go over to I guess it's the south side. This is not where all the politicians are buried. It's over on the other side, not far from where John Sparkman lies and rests today. And that's where you find the burial site there of Don Mincher. Okay, let's see here. Dr. William Burritt. Now, if you spend time in Huntsville and you go up to Montesano, there's a place there which is called Mountaintop Mansion, and that was the home of Dr. William Burritt. Here's another mausoleum type place. You don't see those very much in the cemetery, to repeat myself. And let's see who here. And Albert Russell, Revolutionary War veteran. He was a colonel in the 12th Virginia Regiment. He'd been a lieutenant for a while, and then later was a colonel in the 12th Virginia Regiment. There's his grave marker there. Okay. Now, I thought this was really neat. Some of you follow my presentations on YouTube. Not long ago, I did one on the Bankhead family, and one person who was missing from this was the wife of William Brockman Bankhead. And at that time, I thought, well, I wonder where she is buried. Why is she not buried at the very large Bankhead plot up at Oak Hill Cemetery? And the reason for that, she is buried elsewhere. Now, this is the mother. They called her Ada. Adelaide Eugenia Sledge Bankhead. This is the mother of Tallulah Bankhead. Now, Tallulah Bankhead was born, and I think it was in 1901, and shortly after her birth, her mother, Ada, died. She was a very attractive young lady there. But if you go there today, you can find the burial site there of Ada, the mother of Tallulah Bankhead. Now, Tallulah Bankhead is buried in New York. All right. So anyway, I've often wondered about this. Why didn't they relocate, exhume the body of Ada, and bring it to Jasper, Alabama, at Oak Hill Cemetery, and bury her in the Bankhead family plot. I don't know. That'd be worth looking into next time I see some members of the Bankhead family here in town. Okay, and let's see here. Moving on, some of the other individuals. There's a Confederate burial ground that is present here. I would say there's probably, I don't know, 70, 80 Confederate graves that are in that plot there. Most of them are unknown. Some of them, I think they know the identity of the individuals that are buried there. It just doesn't match up with the gravestone itself. All right. And I happened to find this, by the way, and I took this photograph when I was in the cemetery. It's not the burial site to anyone. I just thought it was kind of an interesting carving. It's present there, placed on a tree stump. All right, on we go. And this was another interesting one. I never found this grave site. This individual is known as the Black Widow of Hazel Green. And notice her name here. Her first name is Elizabeth, but Elizabeth Dale Gibbons Flanagan Jeffries Hyde Brown Ruth. She was married and widowed 6 times. I imagine there's a really good story there. I wonder if she killed all of those husbands of her. Here's another good story here. Lily Flagg. And there is a Lily Flagg Road that is present in Huntsville. But she was the Queen of the Jersey. She is buried there in Maple Hill Cemetery. And she is a cow. In the 1892 Chicago World's Fair, she won the blue ribbon for the most butter in a year. A remarkable accomplishment. And her owner is Samuel B. Moore, and he's buried there too. And he was the owner of Lily Flagg, and he painted his house butter yellow. I thought that was really clever with that. All right, another individual here, and this deserves to be explored a little bit further. The Gypsy Queen. She's buried in some mysterious grave that only a few people know about. And last but not least, I found this on the same day here in a driving rainstorm, not buried at Maple Hill Cemetery, but buried over near Oakwood University, Oakwood College in Madison, Alabama, is Richard Wayne Penniman. If you don't know who I'm talking about, this is none other than Tutti Frutti Little Richard. Born in 1932, had a typo right there, and died in 2020. And that is where he is buried there. There's only about 500 graves in that Oakwood Cemetery, but it's well worth your time if you want to go over there and see where Little Richard is buried there. All right. So anyway, that is Maple Hill Cemetery with a closeout on Little Richard here. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.